You're seated in a meditative position in a room lit only by a single candle. You extend your hands out before you, palms facing each other, and stare at the space between them. You begin to imagine energy flowing through your hands into that space between and forming a ball. After maintaining this mental image for a few moments, you begin to actually feel something there. Perhaps heat or magnetic pushing and pulling, or perhaps an electrostatic tingling sensation. Against the backdrop of the darkness of your room, you swear you can even make out faint colors between your hands. A rainbow of greens and reds, blues and yellows. Now, focusing more deeply, you imagine pouring a feeling of sadness into this ball between your hands. You notice as the texture changes, the ball grows colder and heavier and feels like it's pulling down toward the earth. Your hands begin to lower from the imagined weight. Now, instead, you breathe an energy of joy into the ball and can feel it growing lighter, brighter, warmer, and more diffuse. In the real world, you're welcome to believe that such sensations are merely the product of human imagination. But in the world of darkness, this gives us a perfect demonstration of today's topic of discussion: quintessence. Quintessence is a kind of metaphysical energy in Mage the Ascension, which flows throughout all of existence and fuels the existence of all things. Everything in existence is made up of a metaphysical pattern, similar to Plato's concept of forms. And when quintessence flows through that metaphysical pattern, the object or force or living being becomes real and manifest. When that quintessence flows through an already existing object, it becomes more real, hyper-real, sacred, revered, transcendent. Mages can use this energy to empower their spells, mechanically lowering the difficulty of their magic rolls. Or they can use this energy to create objects, forces, and organisms from nothing. They can use it to enchant objects and organisms with supernatural power, and even attack directly with supernatural energy and powered energy weapons. While the concepts involved may at first seem a bit difficult to grasp, our culture is in fact inundated with such notions. Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, The Secret, Your Invisible Power by Genevieve Barrand. Such books promise that by simply holding a thought in your mind long enough and with enough intensity of emotion, that concept will manifest into your life. Think long enough about a sports car and $1 million, and events will naturally rearrange themselves in such a way that you find yourself inevitably behind the wheel of your dream car, with $1 million conveniently in the back seat. More precisely, to hear such authors tell it, to hold a thought in your mind is to give it up to the infinite intelligence of the universe, where it makes an impression like a footprint in the soft earth. The deeper the impression, the more likely the universe is to start producing more of that thing fueled by the energy of your emotion, intention, and will. This concept is nothing new, of course. The earliest men drew cave paintings depicting successful hunts, and many anthropologists now believe it was with the intention to manifest real-world success in hunting through what is called sympathetic magic. That is to say, magic which utilizes depictions such as the poking of a voodoo doll in order to bring about that which is depicted. In mage terms, the money manifester and the cave painter are using their imagination and paint in order to weave the pattern, and then fueling that pattern with attention, will, and desire, the fundamental sources of quintessence, in order to bring about the desired manifestation. In our own world, the concept of quintessence can be traced back to the early Greek philosophical model of the 5 elements out of which it was believed the world in its entirety was composed. The 5th element of ether was associated with the clear upper sky, the celestial realm, and later the fiery empyrean, where only God dwelt outside of even the spiritual realm. The medieval alchemists took the concept of a 5th elemental essence, or quintessence, regarding it as the prima materia, or prime matter, out of which all other matter, including the other 4 elements, was fundamentally composed. In theory, if you were to break down any chemical substance to its most fundamental constituents, you would only be left with the prime matter, the star of the matter, quintessence. One alchemical notion had it that the fabled and sought-after philosopher's stone was simply composed of refined quintessence. The ether, or quintessence of the West, was later associated with the Akashic element, or 5th element of certain Vedic beliefs of India, where Akasha is the element of space, similar to the clear upper sky concept in the West, with its only characteristic being shabda, or sound in the sense of meaning, svota, which words convey, rather than the actual acoustic properties, divani. While reading the works of Paracelsus and other alchemists certainly could yield a sense of mystical energy flowing through the world, it is probably mostly in association between quintessence and akasha, where the term picks up the connotations of the mystically energetic. Akasha, particularly in its association with prana, likewise bears a similarity to the role of qi in the 5-element system of China. In both pranayama and qi kung, the breath, and more importantly the attention and imagination, are used to move a kind of subtle energy which flows through the body, vitalizing it, and hypothetically flows through all things as well, sustaining their existence and defining their nature. Many other cultures bear a similar energy model, such as the mana of Hawaii, and or a 5-element model, such as the medicine wheel of several Native American peoples. Eventually, the Western concept of ether became the very same theory of luminiferous ether, which inspired the in-game Sons of Ether. The theory of luminiferous ether was an attempt to explain the propagation of light through the vacuum of space, and was debunked by the now famous Michelson-Morley experiment. While the Michelson-Morley experiment was taken to have disproven the theory of ether, however, as Einstein himself noted, if light simply travels through the fabric of space-time, then the fabric of space-time itself is what we once called ether. Interestingly enough, scientists seem to have resurrected the concept, more or less, in a type of dark energy, possibly constituting a fifth fundamental force, which they have dubbed Quintessence, fittingly enough. In the world of Mage the Ascension, there is, regardless of what you believe or what you call it, a kind of energy which flows through all things and, like the prima materia, forms the fundamental substance out of which all things are made. In the Mage universe, God, or the One, as he is known to members of the Celestial Chorus, is a being of pure quintessence. All humans have a shard of the One inside of them. When they awaken, that becomes their avatar and makes their magical acts possible. Those for whom magic is possible then have the ability to turn around and use quintessence to manifest patterns into the material plane by fueling those patterns with quintessence. Just as is the case in our own real world, this metaphysical energy has many different names to different groups of people. The Akashic Brotherhood and the Kuei Jin vampires of the East both refer to quintessence energy as Qi, or the blood of the dragon. Other vampires also rely on quintessence without recognizing it as such. The quintessence found in blood accumulates in a vampire's body, turning that blood into the special vitae, or vampiric blood, that grants them eternal life and supernatural power. Werewolves also rely on quintessence, referring to it as gnosis, and at times exchanging it with spirits for spiritual gifts. Changelings, or fairy folk, who are creatures of incarnate dreams, subsist on a refined form of quintessence, which they call glamour, which is literally the stuff that dreams are made of. Demons extract their version of quintessence, or faith, directly from the divine spark within humanity by inspiring either fear or reverence, while angelic beings like the Asama and Nephilim get their faith the same way mages and werewolves do, from sacred and holy sites. These sacred locations have different names to different groups as well. Mages call them nodes, and for most mages, a node is their only source of free-floating quintessence. Werewolves call them cairns, and few entities would dare to challenge a pack of werewolves over the possession of a cairn. Wraiths, those remnant ghosts of the dead, refer to such special locations as haunts, while changelings refer to them as glades, over which they build freeholds for rest and sanctuary. Besides the Kuei Jin, who refer to them as dragon nests, most vampires neither know nor care about nodes, and fundamentally get all of their quintessence from the blood of their victims, without even knowing that quintessence exists. Otherwise, it is the single most valued resource in the world of darkness, with even alien invaders occasionally making their way to Earth in order to harvest our quintessence as a resource. Besides nodes, special events, such as large-scale protests, may form a kind of temporary node called a wellspring, while special times of the year, such as the vernal equinox, produce quintessence themselves and are called junctures. Some can also derive quintessence from high-value businesses called ventures, and more powerful users of prime magic can extract quintessence from existing patterns through blood sacrifice, animal sacrifice, and the total destruction of spirits, objects, and living things. Many who come to a node find them poisoned or tainted by energies of a certain resonance. In Mage the Ascension, resonance is the quality or flavor of a given energy. A church may have a particularly holy resonance, whereas a haunted house may have a darker and more foreboding resonance. Such resonances can attract spirits of a similar nature. For instance, the scene of a murder may have a very dark resonance, which in turn may attract demons, specters, and servants of a dark entity known as the Worm. People can also have resonance, especially mages who cast the same kinds of magic repeatedly, or consistently make the same kinds of cosmically significant choices. The personal resonance of individuals will often show up as different colored auras or halos around the individual when viewed with mystical sight. Mages with incredibly potent resonance will be surrounded with strange, spontaneous effects. A mage with a strong, fiery resonance may be hot to the touch, and they may be present for an inordinate number of inexplicable fires. A dark mage who practices with deathly entropic energies may find that the meat in their fridge spoils well before the expiration date, and metal objects rust quickly. Low to moderate levels of resonance can be a boon for a mage, as they actually resonate with the appropriate spells, making them easier to cast. A mage with a fiery aura who casts a flame spell will find it easier, though casting ice magic may be considerably more difficult. Besides resonating with the mage's aura, a spell can also synergize with the environment, such as spiritual summoning spell in a grave at night. A spell cast in the presence of an appropriate resonance has its difficulty reduced by at least one, though in the presence of a powerful node, the storyteller may reduce it even further or add beneficial effects such as the increase of damage. While resonance can be a boon, at higher levels resonance can also drive a mage to a condition known as quiet. Quiet is a kind of madness in which the mage begins to lose their grasp on reality. While resonance can lead to developing greater levels of quiet, primarily, quiet results from high levels of what is called paradox. As briefly discussed in a prior video, paradox results from violations of consensus reality. That is to say, even though the unawakened are not very powerful, each exerts at least some small influence on the fabric of reality by way of their unconscious beliefs. When a lot of people believe very similar things and even come to accept it as the norm, it becomes consensus reality. Think of reality like a game. As long as everyone agrees on a common set of rules, then we can all play together. If you're caught cheating, you may be penalized for breaking the rules. If you're caught cheating often enough, then you may be banned from the game outright, and then you'll have to go play your own game elsewhere. In this metaphor, mages are the cheaters who break the rules of the game that everyone else has unwittingly agreed to play. Paradox results from cheating, and especially for getting caught cheating at the game of reality by the use of magic. Paradox and Quintessence sit on the same wheel on the character sheet, but Paradox takes precedence. For instance, if you have 15 points of Quintessence and 4 points of Paradox, you could, at most, gain 1 point of quintessence. But you can still gain up to 16 points of paradox, with the first filling up the empty space, and the rest erasing quintessence as they go. You may be wondering why quintessence and paradox share the same wheel at all. After all, quintessence is a kind of metaphysical energy, while paradox is simply, on the surface, a measure of the extent to which one has been caught breaking reality's rules. Remember before, when I told you that anything overflowing with abundant quintessence becomes hyper-real? Well, the more paradox one accrues, the more divorced from consensus reality one becomes. As one builds up paradox, they may increase in quiet, becoming mentally divorced from reality in their insanity. At a certain point in their mounting insanity, the mage can become what's called a marauder. A mage so divorced from reality that their magic forms a pocket of a totally different reality around them, and they start literally living in a bubble, off in their own special little world. Marauders, however, can still continue to grow in quiet until they are kicked out of reality altogether, becoming what's called a Dream Lord, masters of their own dimension of existence. Even those who do not suffer quiet may be assaulted by paradox spirits and dragged into a pocket dimension known as a paradox realm. Those are, in the best case scenarios, like timeout boxes for rule breakers, and in worst case scenarios, serve as permanent hells for dirty, vulgar sinners against reality. In essence, though they may not seem like contrasting elements, you can think of quintessence as a sort of harmony with the music of the universe, amplifying the waves with each point accrued. And paradox you can think of as a kind of dissonance which conflicts with the harmony of the universe until it is eventually separated out. While I intend to discuss it in another video, Prime is the sphere of magic which is used to manipulate quintessence and the patterns through which they flow, and at the higher levels to even create nodes and nullify paradox. The Celestial Chorus occupies the seat of Prime on the Council of Nine Traditions, which is appropriate because they collectively worship God under the name of the One, who, as previously mentioned, is a being of pure quintessence. The Celestial Chorus primarily use quintessence to make things holy, sacred ground, blessed objects, anything consecrated, holy water, sacred sword, etc. If it's holy in any way, then Prime is likely involved. As previously mentioned, the faith that demons draw upon from the sacred spark in man through fear and through reverence, and which angelic beings gather at churches and sacred sites, is likely a form of quintessence as well. For the technocracy, the Syndicate are the masters of prime magic, though they use a variant known as primal utility, and think of quintessence less like some kind of mystical, flowing energy, and more in terms of the metaphysical concept of value. Where the Celestial Choristers worship God Almighty, the Syndicate only worships the almighty dollar. The Syndicate borrows the concept of the enlightened anthropic principle from Tychoidean cosmology, which posits that reality functions like a hypercomputer that instantiates all computable models to the extent of their completeness. In other words, the more complete the concept, the more it manifests in reality. Metaphysical value is what determines what thinking beings will put more thought into, aka which computable models will be more complete, and by extension, what will manifest into reality. By manipulating value itself on a fundamental level, the syndicate can control what's real and what gets computed by reality. VR only exists now because the market demand existed before, and thus it came to be. And that's just for sleepers. A savvy syndicate member can redistribute and invest value into an idea, making it a reality overnight, or they can strip a concept of all its value until reality itself forgets that it ever existed. While the holy choristers and savvy syndicate may seem diametrically opposed, both create objects of deep significance. Whether you look with awe upon a golden statue because of its incredible economic value, or gaze with reverence upon the most holy sacrament, you are recognizing something deeper which is inherent to the object, regardless of its practical utility. Just as Akasha is the element of meaning, so too is the quintessence of Mage the Ascension, the substance which imbues objects and organisms with glory and worth. Such is the power of quintessence, the power of prime. The Lord giveth, and the Lord taketh away. This is the water of life. This is that in which we live, and move, and have our being. Now that you understand the nature of quintessence, you now have the power of God, that imperial power from the highest heaven. Use it to create or to destroy. In the end, you will join mankind united in a single song of the celestial chorus, or, like the marauders, you will be cast into the outer darkness, where there will be a weeping and a gnashing of teeth. Either way, thank you for joining me on this episode of The Ascended Mage. If you'd like to manifest your support for me, you can do so by channeling Quintessence into the like and subscribe buttons below, and by joining my Discord server, which you can find sympathetically linked in the description. Thank you. I will see you next time. Cheers.